20 years later, the 21% RT Kevin Costner movie that flopped hard in theaters gets a second chance. Summary. Follow. Like. Thread. 1. Login. Kevin Costner rose to fame in the 1980s for his work in The Untouchables, Field of Dreams, and so on. By the time he starred in a romantic comedy in 2005 opposite Jennifer Aniston, he had already won 2 Academy Awards for Dances with Wolves. In Rumor Has It, which has The Graduate as the backdrop, he played Dustin Hoffman's character, a charismatic millionaire who had a relationship with 3 generations of women from the same family. Costner played the role with grace and charm, even though many regard the movie as one of Aniston's worst movies. Rumor Has It didn't receive much love from the critics or fans when it first came out. 20 years later, its arrival on the streaming platforms has given it a second life. And this time, the movie had much better luck, and it went from being a comedy flop to an underrated gem. Rumor Has It initially struggled at the box office. The 2005 comedy had a stellar cast. Aniston starred as the protagonist, Sarah Huttinger, a journalist who gets cold feet after getting engaged to Mark Ruffalo's Jeff Daly, and goes on a journey to uncover her true parentage after learning about her mother's and her grandmother's affair with the same man. Costner played a crucial role in the movie. His character, Beau Burrows, was whom Sarah suspected to be her real father. What's particularly interesting about Rumor Has It is that the scandalous affair made its way to literature and became a movie known as The Graduate. In the 2005 movie, Charles Webb wrote a book about Beau Burrows' affair with Sarah's grandmother, who became Mrs. Robinson in the novel. Both Webb's novel and the movie The Graduate exist in the real world. While it sounds almost too wild to be true, the story is actually true. Webb's book, about college education and a wealthy family, is autobiographical. However, the character Benjamin Braddock was based on Webb himself, and the part of Mrs. Robinson's seduction was fictional, though the character was loosely based on his partner in real life. Rumor Has It took some creative liberty in telling the untold story, at least the rumored version, of the famed literature, and having Sarah be the granddaughter of Mrs. Robinson is a very interesting angle. However, despite featuring a roster of great actors, Rumor Has It had a hard time at the box office, mainly due to negative critical reviews. The movie only grossed around $88 million worldwide against a $70 million budget. Back then, many took issue with the movie's plot, in which Sarah engaged in a short-lived relationship with Beau Burrows after confronting him in person, and learning they weren't related. Some believed the plot was unbelievable, while others disliked the fact that Sarah had an affair with a man who slept with her mother and grandmother and still managed to go back to her fiancé, Jeff, without consequences. As a result, the comedy struggled to find its audience, even though the wild twist was meant to be funny. 20 years later, audiences are rediscovering the movie that was once considered one of the worst Jennifer Aniston films, which starred Kevin Costner as a charming man who successfully seduces 3 generations of women in the same family. Rumor Has It is wild, but it's also original. Rumor Has It puts Sarah's insecurities under a microscope. It's not just the wedding jitters that she was going through in the movie, but she's also spiraling down a rabbit hole called an identity crisis. Sarah felt trapped in her life and disconnected from her family. Her career was at a bottleneck, and she worried that marrying Jeff meant a domestic life where her dreams and hopes would slowly fade into the background. Meeting Beau, who's much older and more accomplished, opened her eyes to a world that she had never seen before, and with the history between them, the adventure was both Sarah's way of understanding the path her mother once walked and re-examining her own life decisions. Beau was charismatic, and Sarah didn't want to go back to her life. She didn't just have a one-night stand with Beau, but she stayed with him the day after and accompanied him to a fancy party. Sarah was having serious doubts about marrying Jeff, and the fact that her fiancé showed up at the ball and asked her whether she would be willing to marry him, and she failed to answer, said a lot about her state of mind. From Jeff's point of view, what Sarah did was hurtful and incredibly selfish. Understandably, Sarah could go back to Jeff without facing real consequences sounded a little unbelievable. The film also made it seem on several occasions that Aniston's character could really end up with Beau, and that happens to be the beauty of Rumor Has It. Sarah didn't know if she really wanted to marry Jeff until she talked with her sister, and that was when everything clicked. She didn't have the answer a second before, and it made sense for the character. Most movies make the quest seem easy and obvious, but rumor has it, shows just how messy it can get, because a major life decision isn't just about love. Sarah contemplated how marriage would change her life and the fact that she didn't like where she was in life. She had reservations, not about Jeff, but about marriage itself, and her obsession with finding out what truly had happened to her mother is almost a little sad. Because she had lost her mother at a young age, Sarah didn't have her mother when she needed her the most, and Bo was the closest thing she could have at the moment. It may be a hot take, but rumor has it, is unfiltered when it comes to Sarah's journey, and Aniston was the perfect actor for the job. Sarah is similar to Rachel in Friends in many ways, and the most beautiful thing about both characters is how messy and vulnerable they get when they try to figure something out. It mirrors the journey many people go through in real life. Many films start the story with the answer in mind, but rumor has it, didn't. Instead, it allowed Sarah to lead and tell her own version of the story. Kevin Costner played Bo convincingly. Some may consider the plot too wild, but Costner's performance made it a very reasonable thing for 3 generations of women to fall for the same man. Bo did have the charisma, and most importantly, he represented wild adventures that people sometimes crave. Costner's role has a high risk of being hated by viewers, but the film presented him much like a rite of passage that both Sarah and her mother had to go through to know what they thought they were giving up was never a life meant for them. Costner's character is also tragic in a way because he loved Sarah's mother, but she chose another man. Decades later, he fell for Sarah, and she made the same choice, to go home to another man over him. Rumor has it, tells a very interesting story about the scandals of a Pasadena family, and the affairs are controversial in nature. It makes sense that the creative approach received some criticism. Regardless, the movie feels like a refreshing breeze in the formulaic pool of comedy movies about weddings and affairs. In fact, that's the very reason why Aniston signed up for the movie. The movie was her first project after Friends, and she admitted to it being a nice little delicate step out of the nest. It was fun and light, she told Female in an interview. It wasn't that complicated, and I also really thought, as far as these romantic comedies go, this was interesting. To have The Graduate as a backdrop, as opposed to the formulaic girl gets guy, fakes it to the fiancé to fool the guy that she really wants, and then she really doesn't get him. Not that there is anything wrong with it, but there are just so many ways you can tell a story. People get lazy, and I thought Ted Griffin did a really good job. Even though the movie received mostly criticism from critics, Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars out of 4 and highlighted just how well Costner played Bo because viewers could really see him with either Sarah or her grandmother. And there were instances where the scale might really tip that way. Rumor has it, is a hidden gem in a romantic comedy where the girl doesn't end up with the guy she attempts to run off with, and instead, she comes back and realizes that she already had love in her life and she just failed to cherish it the way she should have.